Welcome everybody. Thank you for attending tonight, or whatever time of day it is with you. So I'm going to be talking about how to become a digital designer in 2024. I've just gone through the agenda, but for those who've just joined quickly, I'll talk about what digital design is, introduce myself, talk about pay rates in different design roles, a day in the life of a designer, common journeys to becoming a designer, courses and costs, next steps, and then a Q&A, attendee feedback, and free resources and links. What does digital design cover? Graphic design, visual design, brand design, web design. I'm going to focus mostly today on UX, UI, and product design, but I will talk about other types. There's also interaction design, animation design, motion graphics, and a few other specializations as well that kind of sit around UX. I'm going to be discussing particularly the differences between UX, UI, and product design, but I'm not going to be covering the things at the bottom of the screen there. Okay, so this diagram, we've got the pink area is graphic design, and a core part of graphic design is, of course, knowing the core design principles like typography, color, and layout, how to deal with assets such as images, infographics, that's graphs. And with graphic design, you're more using something like software like Adobe Photoshop, and you're doing very static visual offline assets, but also digital graphics, things like banners, social media posts, advertising materials. Then over here in the grey bubble, we've got visual and UI design. It's very experience focused, and you also need that those foundational design principles. And then the grey one at the bottom, we've got UX design. This is very function focused. So I won't go into the details of the whole bubble, but you can see what's involved there. Okay, we'll come back to that later. Okay, so I'll introduce myself. Hi everyone, thanks for coming. My name's Rachel. Why am I qualified to talk about this stuff? So I did a Bachelor of Engineering in Product Design and graduated in '96. Until then, I've spent 27 years working in tech and design. My first job was a C programmer at Rolls-Royce Aerospace. And then I did 5 years at News Corp as a graphic artist on newspapers like The Australian and Daily Telegraph. I learned a lot about visual design there. Then I moved into web design, UX design, and UI design. I also spent many years working for major ad agencies like M&C Saatchi, and I had a startup of my own for a while. I spent many years freelancing, and I've been contracting, earning around €650 a day by today's rates. So that was a typical career journey for one that started when I started out. Things are a bit different now in some ways. So I went from more graphic design or visual design, then into digital design, UX and UI. So if you guys would like to connect with me, you can see my LinkedIn there. If you just type in Rachael Page, my name's AEL, and then Page is my surname, and we can connect. Let's jump into contractor rates and salary pay rates in 2024. So I've updated my research today because this is a new event. As I already mentioned, €650 a day for a senior UX/product designer is kind of standard. That means in an average month, you can earn €13,000, equates to $3,500 a week, over 5,500 Australian dollars a week. That, though, is for a senior level contractor with several years' experience and some well-known names in advertising on the CV and LinkedIn. But bear in mind, that sounds fantastic, I know, but bear in mind that contracts are often anything from a few days, or they could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months long, and contractors are unlikely to be employed for 48 weeks per year. Plus holidays, sick pay, and other benefits are not covered as a contractor. So you do have to account for all that stuff yourself, and you also need some extra insurances as well. So as you can see on the graph here, the top line is Europe, the bottom line is USA. First column is UX designer, second is UI designer, and third is product designer. So you can see there that there are some major differences between the US. If you look at the bottom right hand corner, USA product designer, For a senior, you're going all the way up to 175,000 a year. I mean, you've got to remember that salaries always vary, depending on factors such as experience, location, and the company. So, this is only ever going to be based on information that's been collected. And here's designer salaries around the world. And this is average. So you've got to be careful with that, because when you start out, it can be less than 25% of someone who has 15, 20, 25 years experience and might be working in a really big company. So yeah, you can see United States there is standout with 94,000, whereas South Africa is one of the lowest, 35, Australia 41. I think, it's hard to talk about averages, because you actually need to talk about junior, midweight, and senior pay rates to be realistic. Let's talk about the difference between UX, UI, product design, and other types of design role. So there is a lot of confusion about about UX and UI. Some people think that they're the same thing. A lot of recruiters do, unfortunately, and it can create a lot of angst in the industry. So you probably know what a graphic designer is. They transform ideas into stunning visuals, but it's focused on flat visual asset creation, talking about visual storytelling and positioning. So you could be working in packaging, publications, as I was in a newspaper, web, and advertising. So there's some nice examples of graphic design. Visual and brand design. So when you're doing brand design, you're more focused on selecting appropriate typography, colors, creating the brand guidelines as well, such as you can see in these images as well. Quite a specialized role, and logos are very expensive. A standard logo should cost around 10,000 euros. A lot of people think that they're very easy to do. Yes, there are platforms where you can get a free logo or a logo for €5, but those logos are not proper brand design. So then we've got web and interaction design. I think everyone knows what web design is. Now, interaction, an example of that would be the example on the right hand side. We've got a timeline here, and as the person, it's not going to work now because it's a PDF, but as the person mouses over the different images, the pictures can slide up and down, and different images can come to the fore. So there can be some really nice, engaging ways to do interaction design. Over to UX, UI, and product design. This is really the focus of the session today. So UX design focuses on creating a seamless and enjoyable overall experiences for users when interacting with a product, emphasizing valuable features, functionality, and user satisfaction. So despite the fact that you've got design in the title of UX design, you've got to remember you're designing experiences, you're not designing visual assets so much. Whereas in UI design, you are designing those interfaces and the visual assets, web design assets. So UI design involves designing the visual elements and interactive components of a product. For example, a button that is unpressed, pressed, focus states of various things as well. And focusing on creating visually appealing, intuitive, user-friendly interfaces. And then you've got product design. The difference with product design is it's a lot more strategic, and it's more balancing the user and the business needs. And it's a holistic process of creating a product or a whole suite of products that interact together. And then you've got animation design and motion graphics. So animation design, it can be frame by frame animation or CGI, bringing characters, objects, or scenes to life. So it's fundamental in film, gaming, multimedia production, and moving visual content which creates a dynamic narrative or a visual experience. So this is a really nice example. So let's go through the differences between UX, UI, and product design. All right, so it's really important to know that experience design is not the same as interface design. The experience happens between the temples. Many people confuse this. but don't do that. I mean, you do see a lot of jobs where it says UX/UI designer, but that doesn't mean they're the same thing. They're two separate individual specializations. For those who are not UX designers yet, sorry if this is a bit simplified, but we'll move on quickly. So in UX, we're solving problems. For example, if you take the example of transport, we want to create a product that transports people from A to B. The essential features on a car were decided a long time ago to be 4 wheels, a steering wheel, an accelerator, and a brake. They make up the function of the car or the user experience of the car. So before cars were ever invented, people would start with, if they did it the way we do it today, they would start with user research, followed by UX design, and then conduct user testing to refine the product, but just as an example. But then you finally move on to user interface design. So user interface design would be things like the body style, the door handles, the seat colours, the number of radio controls. So that's the equivalent of UI design in a car, just the little handles, things like that. When we're talking about UX and UI design, it's important to realise that what we're seeing is just the top of the iceberg. Below what we see as consumers or users of a product or an app, there is a huge amount of things that have gone into it, such as user research, business research, stakeholder interviews, wireframing, user testing, visual design, reviews, code and front end databases, things like that. So a lot of people forget that all that stuff is necessary, but it's a huge part of the process. The other thing to note is if the foundational things are not done right, then the top of the iceberg, or the part that you see, doesn't work very well, so it's not very usable or valuable or functional. So no amount of fancy UI is going to make a poor product good. So product design is similar to UX, except that they differ in scope, emphasis, and desired outcomes. UX design focuses on optimizing user interactions. Product design integrates business goals and aesthetics, striving to create complete user-valued products. Despite the differences, though, both roles are driven by the common goal of delivering products or services that meet user needs and provide significant value. So value is really a word to focus on. Let's look at the core principles for UI design, UX design, and product design. So the core principle of UI is beauty and functionality, whereas in UX, it's usability and accessibility, kind of what I've just been saying in relation to the car. Whereas with product design, it's more about feasibility, viability, and desirability. The primary concern for a UI designer is, does it look good? In UX, is it user-friendly and effective? And in product design, does it meet business and user objectives? Primary focuses in UI is the visual design and interfaces, UX is the user experience and functionality, and product design is the entire product and business goals. And remember, that could also be a suite of products as well. The design process in UI is to design an appealing and visually pleasing interface. In UX, it's to design a seamless user experience. And in product design, designing a product that satisfies business goals and needs. Problem solving is for UI visual design problems, for UX experience problems, and for product design, it's more about business problems. The design thinking with regard to UI design is just visual appeal. With UX, it's about creating user-centered designs. And with product design, the designs need to align with business objectives. Okay. And finally, the research focus for the three is aesthetics for UI, user needs for UX, and market needs and competitors in product design. We also do think about competitor analysis in UX design. There are some overlaps here sometimes. And then finally, user empathy. UI design doesn't really have much involvement with empathy. UX design is very much involved with empathy to try and understand user needs, behaviours, pain points, and to inform design decisions. And product design, balancing and understanding user needs with business objectives. Okay, that was a bit in depth. Let's talk about the design thinking process. Simplified, it's about empathizing with the people in your market, your users, people basically, and then to define the problem. What are we trying to do here? What would success look like? And then to think of solutions, brainstorming, ideating. Here you might be doing things like creating personas. You might split your market into 2 or 3 personas, for example, sometimes more. And then you do prototyping, you do low fidelity, mid fidelity, high fidelity, and then test. It's not just to test the product in-house, it's to test that all on your users. And there can be also several areas where you're testing as well, and many different kinds of testing. So let's talk about some specialist roles. So you've got the UX researcher. This is one of my favorites personally. I really enjoy doing UX research. It's totally possible to be a UX researcher and a UX designer and a UI designer all in one role, by the way. So the UX researcher dives deep into user behavior, conducts studies, surveys, and interviews to collect valuable insights that guide the product decisions. So you're trying to identify design issues, address weaknesses, find gaps, and enhance the user experience, and also to choose suitable research methods. That's also based on, you might have a certain budget, time constraints, all sorts of things, sometimes with NDAs and all sorts of things like that. So you have to carefully select the right research tools and techniques to investigate user needs effectively. So the UX researcher cultivates a research mindset, has a keen eye for design issues, and has the ability to choose suitable research methods and systematically tackle and solve problems. Then you've got a UX writer. So it's not really just a copywriter. It's about creating customer-facing text or copy that appears within the design of digital products. So, for example, have you ever seen a button that says click here? That's bad. Don't do that. That's not something that's probably been UX written. So, for example, a button that says back to home or purchased now or purchase for $2.99, you know, it has to be concise, short, but also truthful and pass on the right kind of information. There's nothing worse than being in a car and you say, oh, I think I'm going to go to the next stage, but then the purchase happens. So that means that there's bad terminology on the button if it's doing something that you didn't expect it to do, doing something too early, or taking you to a place that you didn't expect it to take you to. So UX writers give thought to the words users see, ensuring clarity, consistency, and seamless reading throughout the user journey. So the person is on a journey through a website, essentially. UX copywriter is a little bit different. So this is about convincing people to take action. You may well have heard of a funnel, a sales funnel. And this is all about understanding the user and the product and comprehending the target audience and the product and bringing that to them in a way that they both understand it and have the opportunity to become interested, selecting words that inspire action and persuade users to engage with or purchase the product. So it's about storytelling, compelling narratives, persuasive content, something that resonates with users and encourages active engagement. So the trick here is to avoid very full pages of text, break it up with, as you can see here, plenty of images, titles, buttons, calls to action. You know, there are 3 options here. And then we've got the SEO copywriter. So this is all about selecting words and phrases. So keywords actually does cover a phrase as well, which you might not know. So it's not just a single word, it can be one or more words which becomes a keyword. So what you're trying to do is to insert the kind of words, basically speaking, the kind of words that people might using a search engine so that your website will come to the top. And it's not just about having one keyword or one phrase. You probably have hundreds strategically placed throughout a website, depending on which page. So if it's a page about certain products, there'll be different keywords to a different product and different keywords to the home page. So it has to be optimized for search engines, but also engaging for human readers. So that's really a complete balance. Copywriters are skilled in integrating relevant words and phrases into the content to improve the web page's visibility in the search results. One little trick that I like to do for this is I have a main title, but then I'll have a subtitle just below it, which is much, much smaller, and I can pack a few keywords into that, for example. So they also focus on crafting high quality, informative and engaging content that resonates with the target audience. So it's all about driving organic traffic to a website. And why that's important is organic traffic is free. So if you can get your search engine optimization, SEO, done properly, this is extremely powerful. However, obviously, everyone wants that too. So you will have some competition. In essence, copywriters for SEO bridge the gap between content creation and SEO strategy, ensuring that the content is search engine friendly but also valuable and appealing to users. Let's talk about what it's like to be a designer, a day in the life of a designer. So this is, every day is really, really different. So what I've put together here is just a generalization. I do tend to find, though, that my morning routine is that I do start very early, well before 9, and I do tend to get emails out the way and I do plan my day. I've also pre-planned all of my future handful of days as well. So I'll have a full week or more roughed out in my diary and calendar or in Asana, various tools that I use to make sure that I don't miss deadlines and things like that. And then I've also got meetings in my calendar, which I'll probably add into my daily list just to make sure. So I'll also do a lot of planning and coordination throughout the day, as I've mentioned, and designers in general do tend to do this. And there's something called work in progress meetings, or WIP for short, WIP. So depending what kind of meetings you're going to have, it's really useful to check in with each team that you're working with, or maybe you're only working with one team, but you'll have a regular team meeting or a regular project meeting, depending on how the company is set up, to make sure that everyone's making progress, they don't have any blockers, that, if you need something from somebody else, they're there in that meeting and things can move on. So you'll not just meet with other designers, of course, you'll meet with developers regularly, probably marketing people and product management people as well. And they may not all be in the same meeting, or they may be. They're obviously going to be design work. Figma, for example, possibly Adobe XD. Sketch is an older one now that people have used. So you'll have a list of tasks, usually in something like Monday.com or Asana or Trello, something like that. And you'll need to make notes about your progress and hand it on to the next person once you've finished your design work. You will also be doing user research and testing. They are two different things for anybody that's new to this. User research usually comes earlier on in the process. It's always in a new project, user research comes first. And then once you've got wireframes and prototypes, you'll then test those on those users as well. And those users must be representative of your target market. So this is to understand user needs early on, and also to find any issues with the concept or the wireframes that you've created later on. And when a product or an app or website goes live, you will need to continuously maintain that afterwards as well. So of course there's going to be a lot of collaboration and communication throughout the day. Stakeholders I mentioned earlier, giving updates, but you also might be communicating the value of your role. Sometimes people in the industry, they don't quite understand the UX process, the value of it, the time that it takes, the budget that it requires. So even now in 2024, we're still kind of fighting that fight as a UX designer to explain what we do, because people just look at an interface and say, well, that looks like 10 minutes work. You know, they don't see all the research in the background. And then you do wrap up and reflection. So it's really important, for example, at the end of the day or at the end of a project, and possibly with the team as well, to say, okay, how did we do? Can we do better on the next project? What should we do better next time? So really, the day involves a balance of creativity, collaboration, problem solving. Let's move on to common journeys to becoming a designer. So this diagram's all about really building on skills. So if you're brand new, I don't know, say maybe you're straight out of school, graphic design skills or visual design skills are one of the easiest things to learn. It's a myth that you need artistic talent to be able to do graphic design. There are some tried and tested rules and principles, things like having enough white space on a page, having padding around text, colours that go well together, for example, opposite colours sometimes. So these principles are the easiest things to learn. That ties in very closely with UI design, but then of course you're bringing in things such as the movement. So an interface changes over time depending on how the user has interacted with it. Then we've got UX design, and this is not just the way it looks, but the fundamental functionality of it, as already mentioned. This involves quite a lot more skills than just the visual design area. You need to be a lot more analytical and very organized, and you need to be possibly a bit of a brainstormer or a divergent thinker to be really good at this. And it takes a long time and a lot of practice. And then you've got product design. The reason why I've said that that is kind of a bigger skill area is because it does encompass all of the skills below, but there's more there. Things like strategy and balancing the business needs. So I'm a tutor at Career Foundry, and I do deal with a lot of students privately as well. And what I find is that people who go straight into a UX boot camp, they really struggle with the visual design. They need to put in their tasks and they need to communicate their ideas. Not just great big swathes of text, huge documents. You need to learn how to be concise, maybe create graphs, infographics, and communicate fast and efficiently. The other thing is, if you don't have visual design skills, it really limits your ability to create good looking UI design for your portfolio. And to do a great design for the portfolio homepage itself. So visual design skills sit at the center of this diagram inside that white line, and that's why it's best to start there. That's what I recommend. From then on, what I recommend is that you specialize in something on the outer edges. So as I mentioned, the way that I came through my design career was I started out in visual design, got some experience, then I moved into UX design, and then got more UX design experience, and then I moved into product design. But I actually did the product design course way at the beginning of all this, which is maybe a strange way to do it. But that, I would say, is a good option, and it's more the traditional way of doing it. Now, because we've got a lot more boot camps, we've got a typical boot camp journey. So we've got, you could do a UX design course, or you could do a visual design course. I actually recommend that you do the visual design before the UX design. Then you can get some UX design experience, you can fill your portfolio and learn on the job, and then you can eventually go into product design. As I say, there's so many more skills involved with product design that it would be difficult to go straight into it. Let's talk about design courses and costs. So split this into visual design and product design, because obviously they're very different things. Now, when you're looking at courses, be careful to compare apples with apples. Some courses are online, others are on campus. There's many extra costs with campus. Obviously, you have to move there, you have to rent an apartment, or you might have to travel, or both. Some courses are longer or shorter, obviously higher and lower quality. Some include one-on-one time with a tutor or a mentor, or both, and some include group sessions, any, all, or one of those things. For example, Career Foundry has a UI immersion course, 3 to 6 months, and that is somewhere around 7,000 to 8,000. There's also a company called Interaction Design with a course called Visual Design, and that's 17 hours over 6 weeks, and it's just 15. That's supposed to say US dollars a month. So that totals at $90. So you kind of have to question what's the difference between those courses. Encourage you, if you're thinking about doing a course, to research carefully. The course that I have is called Visual Design Principles. You can do it in 1 month full-time or about 3 months part-time. It totally depends how much time you put into it, and that's 1699. So in my Visual Design Principles course, I focus on teaching core principles, those that I've already mentioned in typography, color, layout, how to use assets such as images, infographics, and it has a big focus on visual design for UX designers and product designers. Whereas I know that UI immersion, for example, totally focuses on UI and is not very related to product design. It won't have any strategic elements in it. Talking about UX and product design courses, you can lump these together essentially under it's essentially a course that takes you through the design thinking process. That process being where you do your research, you create your concept, clickable prototypes, wireframes, and then you test that concept. That essentially, in a nutshell, is the design thinking process. So these are the typical costs. Career Foundry, again, 3 to 6 months, similar price as the UI course. General Assembly, €9,000. BrainStation, £10,500. UX Design Institute, 5,400. Flatiron School, 16,900. Springboard, 11,900. I am offering a very similar course, essentially the same content, for 1,699. It's worth noting as well that Career Foundry did approach me and ask me to write their product design course, but I decided to actually just write my own. All right, so on to course recommendations. This is what I've got to offer. I have my Visual Design Principles course. You can see the link there, but if you just go to artfully.com, you will click on courses and see it quite easily. I would recommend doing that first, but it totally depends on where you are and what your current skills are and what courses you've currently done. And then after that, a digital product design course. You can find both of those at courses.artfully.com as well. What I suggest that you do if you are still interested in becoming a designer, which I must say is a great job. I love it. And not just saying that, I've been a designer, wanted to be a designer my whole life, been a designer my whole life, and I love it. I also love working remotely. That's another thing that you can find out more about on my website, actually, artfully.com. So if you would like to speak to me personally, you can book in a free 30-minute session with me where we will discuss your goals, your current gaps, and how I can help you essentially. Don't know what your goal might be. It might be to land your first role. It might be to create a stunning design portfolio. Before we go into the Q&A, I'm going to just show you a couple of fun things. So here's just so that you can kind of see the kind of work the designer works on. So this is that is an animation for an app that I'm working on currently. It's a bit like Shazam for birds. So it listens out and identifies bird based on their bird song, and then it shows up in the app. And then I've got another one here. So for this one, that would be great to use on a portfolio project page. This, for example, would be a nice thing to do on a portfolio project page in your header. This is just the sort of thing that grabs attention, helps you to land interviews. And so that's also the sort of thing that I can help you with. While I'm waiting for questions, I will take you through some free resources and links that I've got here. Okay, so free resources, free 30-minute session with myself to help you put together a training plan to make sure that you end up in your dream career. I've also got free resources at artfully.com. By the way, artfully is spelled ARTF for Freddie, ULY.com. Just go to the website, click design resources, and you'll see plenty there. I've also got my YouTube channel here with lots and lots of free tutorials, recordings of previous events, all sorts of things there. Please subscribe. I've also got a private community, and that's there so that you can ask questions or showcase designs and for group feedback, so that students can talk to students, students can find people to help test their prototypes, all sorts of things like that. I've got some paid resources. This is a Figma file with the top 10 fonts in it, just to get you started if you've never used Figma before. Figma, by the way, is free, and I do recommend that you give it a try. It's also an excellent way to create PDFs. Interactive clickable PDFs can, for example, suffice as one type of portfolio that you can send off to a company. I've also got a pre-built mobile navbar and lesson, and there's a lesson that tells you exactly how to do that. So highlights when you mouse over it, changes color when you click. How do you do that in Figma? Not easy, but I've simplified it for you. You can see that there. What I've got here as well is a portfolio layout. So this is a fantastic standard portfolio layout. It will get you started. So it's a low fidelity wireframe. You will go in there, enter your own content, your own name, all of your own information, all about you. But that is the kind of portfolio structure that people are looking for now. I've also got the best portfolio platforms. Perhaps designed your portfolio in Figma, or you've got a little bit of an idea the way you want it to be. You will want to find out, well, what's best? Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, Webflow, Framer. Depending on whether you like to code or whether you just want to stay really low tech, and depending whether you want to do animations or not, I recommend you do, by the way, to get noticed. Everything that you would want to know about platforms for UX design and product design is there. Includes things like Behance. I've already talked about design courses. There's a useful article here, how to become a UX or product designer. That kind of links up with the content here. Now I've got some questions. Okay, so let me just read this through. Working on getting into UX design. Most of my experiences involved simple problems. Okay. Struggle to understand some of the concepts in UX courses and workshops. I'm worried I may not be smart enough to be a UX designer. Does it get easier to understand? It's not easy. I think it is one of the toughest UX and product design, some of the toughest jobs out there, in terms of you have to wrap your head around some really complex concepts. I would say the best thing for you to do in this situation, if you're struggling to get a concept, read around the subject. YouTube is a fantastic resource, and also join communities and talk to other UX designers. So with both of these courses, I also do offer personalised one-on-one interactive sessions. However, the personal sessions are not included in the cost. And the prices for individual sessions are on my website. So we've got another question here as well. Do you know of any practice case studies for user research? Yeah, so there's the top 50 resources. I'll just show you what that looks like. Now in here, there are some ways to get real life projects into your portfolio. So rather than doing fake projects, I don't think that works out so well. People know that they're fake, and it doesn't give you the kind of experience that you need to deal with real clients. So I would say go and, if you select portfolio, real life projects for your folio, this is one example. Okay, so we've got catchafire.org here. You can volunteer for good causes and organisations. What you would do here is you would go into, say, web design. There's also marketing. There's also digital advertising, digital marketing. There will be, and research might be relevant to you. So here, for example, website for Immigrant Advocates Response Collaborative. Here's a quick website question. I wouldn't really work with social media if you want to be a UX designer. Here's another website for a community orchestra. So it would be much better actually to get real projects into your portfolio. This one's saying that it's a 1-hour phone call. That's just to give feedback on the website structure. Website content audit, that's also very relevant. And the great thing about these is they're quite short projects. And so you don't really want to get involved for weeks and weeks and weeks. Website visual design, 4 to 9 weeks. When you contact these people, you should also say, look, in return for this work, I would like, things like to be able to show the work in my portfolio. Obviously, that has to be decided in advance. Otherwise, why would you do it? Also, you would like a good reference, as long as you finish the work, I suppose, right? So yeah, there's 10 pages of this. I hope that answers your question, Sumna. And if we don't have any more questions, I'll end the session. So put your hand up. There is a little button there. You can raise your hand or just pop your question in the chat. Well, you can always email me. Don't forget to email me if you would like a free 30-minute session to discuss your training plan. And yeah, I'll leave it there. So LinkedIn, don't forget I'm on LinkedIn, Rachael Page. Please connect with me there because I do often share a lot of content in my LinkedIn as well. Please add me. So there's my LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly sharing things like, oh my God, look at this UX mistake. I'm talking about courses. If you have not yet signed up on my website, artfully.com, do sign up for one of those freebies on the homepage, and then that will add you to my mailing list, and you'll hear all about the new courses that are coming out. All right. So I want to say thank you to everybody for coming along. Keep in touch and have a great day /afternoon/night. Bye.